Guess what? I'm driving the Opel Astra L once again. Welcome to Korrmotive, ladies and gentlemen. This is the new Opel Astra. You're probably wondering, why am I driving the Opel Astra again? Well, there's actually a few good reasons why, other than the obvious, the dealer offered a test drive and I happily obliged. One, the Astra that I drove in 2022 was an ultimate model, which means fully loaded. It had all the bells and whistles on it, and it was a diesel with an automatic transmission. This one is a base model with a gas engine and a manual transmission. And this is the one that people in Macedonia are actually buying. So I was curious what my fellow citizens were actually buying. Secondly, I want to do kind of like a comparison between the fully loaded Astra and the base model like we have here, just to see some of the key differences between them. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly of all, the quality of the previous Astra review posted in 2022 is absolute dog. And now that I've finally figured out all the kinks with reviewing cars in this format, I wanted to do the Astra some justice and review it properly in my new style like I do now. So let's get into it. Let's start with the styling of the Astra. So this is something that I've explained before in generous detail, but let's go over it again. And some lore as well. So the Astra L, which launched in 2022, was the first Astra to be engineered under the roof of the PSA Group and eventually Stellantis. There's absolutely no General Motors in this car. It's all Stellantis, but it is still engineered and built in Germany at Opel's facility in Rüsselsheim. To all intents and purposes, however, the platform and the powertrains and all that stuff, the core components, are all from Stellantis. So the Astra is based on the EMP2 platform that also underpins the Peugeot 308, the current Peugeot 308. I'd imagine that the next Astra will move to one of the STLA platforms, but for now, it's EMP2. This one, as you can see, is red. And I'll put the name of the color on the screen because I don't know what it's called. It has the 16-inch wheels, which as you can see are silver. Very interesting. We don't really see that much anymore. And as I said before, it's a base model, or as it's known here, the Edition. It does have a couple of small options which we will go over, but now let's talk about the styling. So generally speaking, I love the way that the current Astra looks, and I love its sort of squaredness. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the previous Astra generations, most of them were all kind of really rounded. This one swaps all that out for some really sharp angles and sharp corners and right angles rather, and it looks great. So you can see in the front we have Opel's visor. I've explained the visor 1,000 times by now, so you should probably be familiar with it, and the daytime running lights in their characteristic shape, typical of current Opel vehicles. You also have those little vents on the sides of the front bumper, which I believe are not functional, but they look pretty cool, and a pretty subtle grille opening, all things considered. Opel is quite good at subtle grille openings. They're not really one for massive in-your-face designs, and I appreciate them for that. Also, down here you can see the 16-inch wheels again, and that really sharp crease in the hood line, which is something that you also see while you're driving. It's not a problem, but it's just something that you kind of can't unsee when you're looking out the windshield. Also, if you look closely at the mirrors, you'll see that the turn signals in... How many more takes is this going to take? If you look at the turn signals in the mirrors, you'll see that they are vertical. And those mirrors, I believe, are shared to a T with the Peugeot 308's mirrors and some other Stellantis stuff like the Citroen C4. And they look really cool. And you can see that the headlights are now on. They are fully LED in this particular one, the front and the rear. There's no IntelliLux technology like the Ultimate had, but they are full LEDs, and they do have high beam assist as well. Down the side, pretty standard stuff really. I love the side profile of the Astra, and I love how it's a little more upright than the previous generations. It looks great. Not much more to see here really. It's a very nice side profile. And as we move to the rear, we can see the Astra designation spelled out across the center of the tailgate, and the characteristic Opel taillight design. In this particular one, the turn signals are actually horizontal. If you remember the Mocha a few years ago, they're vertical on that one. I think I just tried to activate the alarm by accident. You can see them now. And that down there in the center is your rear fog light, which is clear. And you also have your reverse lights in there as well. And it's also a very cool look. But anyway, yes, very nice looking rear end. And I love all of the different characteristic design lines that it has. So overall, the Astra is a fantastic looking C-segment hatchback. It's not my favorite, but it is definitely up there. So now that we've wrapped up the styling, let's carry on with what we usually do, which is cargo space and practicality. First of all, the key fob. Ooh, autofocus works immediately today, thank you. It's a working day for autofocus as well. Anyway, standard Stellantis key fob, about 100 other models use this key, so it's nothing we haven't seen before. I like the little subtle creases here around the Opel badge. That's something that the others don't have. Anyway, standard 3-button fare, unlock. Your lock button is up there, and your cargo area release, which we will hold down. And there we go. No automatic fifth door on this one, but that button releases your cargo area. As well as using the key, you can also release the tailgate using the Opel badge. I wonder where they got that idea from. Probably some German, I don't know. Anyway, your cargo area here has 422 liters of space, which is a very good number for the class. And you have my requisite equipment bags and other bullshit here, so you can see how much space there actually is. Standard fare parcel shelf, and you can of course fold the rear seats down, and when you do, you get 1,289 liters of space. I'm now going to fold them down real quick just so I can show you what that looks like. And there we go, rear seats folded down, which gives you 1,289 liters of space. But as you can see, there's a fairly major hump here. I'm not sure if the floor is adjustable, but anyway, very practical, very solid. Because of the car's boxy design, you can get a whole lot of stuff in here. Although in terms of features, there's not a whole lot really. You have your illumination, your hooks for grocery bags, and your tethering points down there, and some, well, I was gonna call these shelves, but no, they're just divots. Once you're done with your cargo area, you put your hand in one of these indents here and you close it. And the sound it makes, actually, that's something I really need to mention. The sound that the cargo door makes when you close it is very solid and German. I'm actually going to put the mic inside so you can hear it yourself. What about space in the back? Before we get in, I wanted to show you this cool little detail here. They look like vents. They're not actually vents, obviously, but they look pretty cool. They add a little flair to the side profile. Anyway, space in the back seats. Not a whole lot going on here, so let's just get in. Ooh, didn't hit my head on the roof. Nice. Let me just get into position here. Yeah, this is fine. So there's a decent amount of knee room. This seat is in my driving position. 5'11.5", Discord admin. You know how it goes. Thanks to this little indentation, I swear I couldn't find another word to use here, but thanks to the indentation in the seat, you can squeeze yourself in here. I have a decent amount of knee room. If you're taller than me, you might need to slouch just a little bit, but that won't be an issue because headroom is actually solid, owing to the car's slightly boxier proportions. You also might get a little more room if you recline the seat a little forwards with the backrest. But other than that, this is a fine place to be. However, the rear seats are really low because I feel like my knees are up to my face here. The rear seats are pretty low, so that's also something worth noting, but it's pretty good in here. I could travel like a shorter journey here, no problem at all. You might have noticed already that there's no storage in the front seats. Minus points for that one. There is a decent sized pocket in the door. This part of the door is actually covered in a pretty soft cloth material. The rest is hard plastic, as you might expect. There's a padded little armrest. I don't know why I violated it like that, but there's a padded armrest area on the door. And, well, that's it, really. There's no USB ports here or climate vents. You don't really need them. This is not a very big car. The floor is almost flat. There's a small hump. We'll test that out in a second. And there's no center console coming out of the middle seat, unfortunately. You know, this car maybe could unleash its inner Opel Signum and have like a whole entertainment system back here. That was a weird car reference. If you know, you know. Anyway, let's go ahead and try out the middle seat situation here. Yeah, this is perfectly acceptable here. The knee room is about the same because both of these seats are almost adjusted to the same level. But this is perfectly fine. And from what I can see, there's plenty of foot space for the other two passengers. So if you do get the middle seat, for one, you have a view of the rather nice interior that we'll get to in a sec. But also, yeah, this is perfectly doable for a short journey. And the headroom is pretty good too. To prove it to you here. Good headroom in the middle seat. I am currently in the middle seat. I'm now going to move back to the outer seat, sit up, and it's pretty good. What about the front? Well, first thing, there's no keyless entry on this one, and the mirrors are not power folding, which kind of sucks. And there's a keyhole on the door. There's a little key that slides out of the key fob that you can use to unlock the doors in an emergency. But anyway, this Astra, as you can see here, has the optional AGR approved seats, which include heating and partial electrical adjustments. If you look down here, you have electric lumbar support and a electric thigh support that you can tilt up and down. The cloth material on the seats looks lovely. I love this type of material. And you have these little stitched white stripes, as you can see here. And the same material is also on the door. The rest is all fairly standard stuff. Let's get in. And now we are inside the Astra. This interior should be familiar if you've been watching my videos for a while. But let's begin in the normal way and start it up. And that includes the standard procedure. Foot on the brake and the clutch. Neutralize it. Starter buttons here. It is the same PSA Group starter button, but it's silver instead of black. So push that and boom. Thank you. We have a soft limiter. First thing that we're greeted by in the Astra is this fantastic steering... Oh, damn it. Fantastic steering wheel, actually. It's perfectly sized, and this is only the kind of thing you can expect from a German car. I don't know how to explain it, but you have to sit in the car yourself to feel it. It's perfectly sized. It's not too big and it's not too small. The leather is fairly soft, not the softest in the world, but also not the hardest, and you get teeny tiny little grip extensions here. Then the steering wheel starts to lose points with this. I mean, there is absolutely no reason in a million years why these buttons should be piano black. And I'm sorry that they're all covered in fingerprints, but there's not much I can do about that because you pretty much use these buttons all the time. I think that Opel learned its lesson though, because if you look at the interior on the new Grandland, there's basically no piano black plastics. And I hope that the facelift Astra does the same thing. Anyway, cruise control on this side, media controls on this side, and they've also integrated the visor design into the central pad here with the airbag, which is always great to see. Also, again, no reason to have piano black on the Opel badge. Although I love this third spoke here with its silver piece right in the middle, splitting it in two. And you also have white stitching, which always looks good. And in the middle you have the horn, which sounds like this. The current Opel Astra is available with two different transmissions. You have this 6-speed manual and the 8-speed automatic, which you get in the diesel and the plug-in hybrid versions. To activate reverse, you pull up on that catch to the left and forwards. And it brings up your rear view camera, which has its guidance lines, and you also have front and rear parking sensors on this one. And my favorite thing about the camera is this display here. As you begin to reverse, it sort of stitches together, based on the last things it saw, a kind of rudimentary 360-degree view, which is great. And I would say that you don't need the 360 cameras, but they are available if you so want them. And the resolution of the screen is also fantastic. And another thing, if you turn the steering wheel, the camera follows the direction that you steer in, which is awesome. Basically, you have no excuse for poor parking because you have everything you need here. The transmission itself is actually really nice to use. It's not that notchy at all. It's very smooth and kind of more crisp rather than notchy. The only thing is the first to second gear shift sometimes can be a little notchier than usual. So it's like clunk. Although that could be because of my terrible driving skills, but I digress. It's a great transmission to use. You have a stitched leather shift boot and a piano black shift knob. Why? Your parking brake is here. Yeah, you heard that, I assume. That's because the door was open. The parking brake, you have to pull it up if you're going to get out of the car, no matter what happens. And more to the point, it doesn't engage automatically when you stop the car and put it in neutral. Okay, this one is a manual, I get it, but the automatics are guilty of the same thing, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves with Stellantis vehicles. Let's move on to the infotainment system. As this is the base Astra, it's not really an infotainment system, it's more of a multimedia system, if you will. This is your home screen. You have your climate controls there for only a few small options. Phone, settings, and help. And here you can switch between your connected device or the radio. You're probably wondering why I'm connected to the radio. I'll explain in a moment. If you swipe on the home screen, you get your climate controls again, and if you swipe one more time, you get a few other miscellaneous options like your app drawer here, which includes some ADAS system related stuff, your seat options, different things like that, adjustment for the infotainment system. The settings itself, that option, you can customize various different things on the interior. In customization, you can change the color of the screen. We've seen these options before. They're the standard Stellantis options we have right now. You can change the display settings for what you want the home screen to show and what you want your gauge cluster screen to show. And I'm going to go into that to see if there's a coolant temperature display, because right now the gauge cluster is not showing me that. Anyway, you have your standard fare stuff here. Generally speaking, I've used this infotainment system a million times. It's good. It gets the job done. It's fairly responsive. It's easy to use. And I like the graphics. They are very pleasing, although I do prefer the updated infotainment systems graphics and the updated infotainment system software that we've seen in the Peugeot 3008. I much prefer that one. But eventually we're going to see that here as well, and we're going to see it in the Grandland as well. Mirror screen, again, we need to talk about that more in detail in a second. And over here, this is one advantage that the Astra has over the Peugeot 308, and that's that you have physical AC controls and physical shortcut buttons, no matter which trim level you go for. So you have your heated seats here, which are an option that's been selected on this model. They work great, but the way I'm going to assume that most of you are going to hold the button like this so you can't see to which setting you've set the heated seat to. I would prefer if these lights were on this side instead. There's your heated steering wheel, your car settings, your home, and your climate control, which you actually do need, by the way. Volume up and down, and power, and here's your temperature, AC, automatic, AC max, front defrost, rear defrost, recirculating air, and your fan speed, and a blank switch. I'm not sure what that does. I'll have a look at my old Astra footage and I'll tell you. The reason why you need the climate control shortcut here is because this is the only way to adjust the zones. And there's a blank switch here. Come on. Really? So anyway, why am I mentioning the phone connectivity? That's because it's a complete mess. Now, I understand that my phone cable is not the highest quality, and that can cause connection issues, but I cannot get wireless CarPlay to work no matter what I do. And my phone keeps telling me that we are connected through Bluetooth, but it simply doesn't do anything. So every once in a while, say my phone goes here and there's the cable to connect to CarPlay, my music will just stop. And then these next track commands and the volume controls on this steering wheel will stop working. I don't know what the deal is here, but the CarPlay connectivity needs a little bit of work. Anyway, let's move it on. Here we have your power locks, an additional climate vent, which is nice. This is the only one you have in the center because this whole shebang is taken up by the infotainment system, although you do have one over here as well, which looks great. I love the way it's integrated into the pure panel. This whole screen panel here is what Opel calls the pure panel. On the other side, you have your hazard lights. You have a hidden little storage area. I'm not sure what this could be used for, but it's there. Down here, you have a nice little shelf where your phone can go if you're plugging it into those USB-C ports. They are only USB-C. Here's a 12-volt adapter here, standard stuff. Some extra storage in there that you can see. The shifter that you already saw, and it also highlights the fact that most new cars are specifically designed to have an automatic transmission, because look how much room this takes up in the center console. And if you have a drink in this cup holder, you might knock it over as you're shifting. In the center, you have, well, this is supposed to be an armrest. It has a sliding lid that reveals the storage area. And again, if you rest your elbow here while you're shifting gears, if your arm is long enough, you might accidentally say, I go into second gear, and you'll open the storage area ever so slightly. So again, it just highlights that new cars are not really meant to have manual transmissions. But this car gets a pass because the manual transmission is a joy to use. This is the gauge cluster screen, as you could probably tell. I'm not the biggest fan of the way it's been set up, like the UI, but it does get the job done for most things. Here's your tachometer on this side. I've noticed a lot of automakers in recent times have seriously been avoiding dials, classic dials. So this is all we have. Front and center is your speed indicator and your traffic sign recognition over there. That's your media and that's your trip data, which you control through this button on the wiper stalk to switch between the different views. And if you hold down the button on the wiper stalk, you will reset the trip data. Meanwhile, the button at the end of the turn signal and light stalk changes the different views. So you can show you just media or nothing. And you can configure this through the option in the infotainment system that you already saw. Speaking of the light stalks, well, the PSA group has been using these for like 20 years now. They only recently started using new ones in the Peugeot 3008, and the Opel Grand line is going to get them as well. But these turn signal stalks are straight off of 407 from 2005, or my C6. It uses basically the same ones. They're slightly different and they don't have this bright work, but they are basically the same. And that also means that toggling and engaging high beams goes the same way, which I can't stand. It's a really annoying thing in my C6, and it's also annoying here. Same story with the wiper stalk, works the same sort of way. Nothing much else to say about that. You also, at the end, you turn on your rear wiper just like that. Down here you have your headlight leveling switch and a little slot. I think that's for... Actually, I'm not sure what that's for. Maybe you can rent the car with a coin like you do a shopping cart at a supermarket. Sorry. You have your door panel here with your window controls, your child locks, and your mirror controls, which are this pleasing little rounded cube. And in terms of interior features and content, that's about it, really. So now, let's wrap this up and talk about interior quality and storage. Well, the quality is actually fantastic. There's a lot of soft touch plastics, which I was not expecting. Opel definitely didn't save money on the soft touch plastics. The entire top half of the dashboard here is covered in soft touch plastics, and so is this part below the climate vents, like just below the panel here. This is hard plastic, but that's what you'd expect. The top of the door is also soft touch, so great if you want to rest your arm there. You have this little plastic trim that kind of looks like metal. It's nice. I mean, I wish it was real metal, but it's nice to have. There's also this little cloth area that I showed you before, and the armrest here is actually padded as well. The doors close with a very reassuring sound, as you might expect. The center console area doesn't flex at all. It's very solidly put together, and all of the different buttons and commands have a very nice reassuring feel to them. No surprise, this is a German car. The one complaint I have here is way too much piano black plastic. So the entire pure panel here is piano black plastic. You already saw the buttons on the steering wheel, and most of the freaking center console is piano black plastic as well. And the shifter. Thankfully, the lid to that storage area is not, and this isn't either. But Opel, please, when you facelift the Astra, which will probably be very soon, please try to get rid of most of the piano black like you did with the new Grandland. Thank you very much. As for storage, standard door pockets that can hold large bottles. Disappointingly, there's nothing here for in terms of storage. You already saw this little hidden area in the center. Your phone storage area where you can plug it in for Apple CarPlay. You have 3 cup holders here, 2 larger ones and 1 smaller one. That's perfect for paper espresso cups. Your center console storage area that I already showed you, and the glove box, which is a very good size indeed. And ladies and gents, that's about it for the Opel Astra's interior. Oh, actually, one more thing I need to talk about is, which I sometimes forget to talk about, is the seating position adjustment and stuff like that. So the seats, very comfy and pretty decent amount of adjustment in them, and as I already explained, part of the seat controls are electric. There's plenty of adjustment in the steering wheel for telescoping and tilting as well, and it's not that hard to find your ideal driving position. And something that confuses me, manually dimming rear view mirror. The Corsa had an auto dimming mirror, but the Astra doesn't. And your overhead lighting controls here, standard stuff you've already seen. So overall, this interior is pretty freaking good if I say so myself. Good job, Opel. This Astra has the base engine, and that means it's a 1.2-liter turbocharged 3-cylinder from the PSA group, or rather Stellantis' PureTech family. In this Astra, it makes 110 horsepower and 205 newton-meters of torque, which goes to the front wheels through a 6-speed manual transmission. Also available is the same 1.2-liter PureTech with 130 horsepower. That one also gets an optional automatic transmission. There's the 1.5-liter diesel with 130 horsepower. That one's automatic only. And there's the two plug-in hybrids that pair a 1.6-liter turbo 4-cylinder with an electric motor for either 180 or 225 horsepower. The 225 horsepower version is also the standard powertrain in the Performance Astra GSE. I'm not sure if the new mild hybrid powertrain is going to be available on the Astra. I'll have to ask about that, but I'm fairly certain that it'll eventually get to the Astra as well. And if that happens, that has a 6-speed dual clutch automatic transmission and the electric motor in the mild hybrid lives inside that. The rest of the hybrids are all conventional plug-in hybrids, like you might have seen before. 0 to 100 kph on this one takes 10.5 seconds, and the top speed is this much. So what's it actually like? Well, let's find out. It's time to take the Astra for a drive. So let's get into it then. What is the new Opel Astra like to drive? Well, when I first drove the Astra a couple of years ago, I was a huge fan of the way it drove, but I wanted to see, the contrast with this version, which is lighter at the front end and it has a little bit less power. And a lot less torque because, of course, it's not a diesel. So in town, there's not a whole lot to say. It's very easy to drive. The visibility is surprisingly pretty good. The steering is light. The shifter, it's okay. One slight reservation I have about the shifter is the obscenely long throw from first to second gear, at least in my experience, but the rest was all pretty smooth sailing. The clutch is impossibly light, actually. It's very nice to use. The transmission is not too notchy, but it does have a good amount of feedback. The steering is fairly direct and precise, and the parking sensors and the backup camera make it very easy when you're parking, which is important because this is a hatchback, so it should be, in theory, very easy to park and maneuver, and the Astra certainly is. So now that we've covered the town driving, let's move on to the highway. This is where it gets interesting because you might think that 110 horsepower is not really all that enough for the highway, but one, you have a 6th gear, which makes things on the highway a lot easier, and secondly, the Astra actually performs very well on the highway. Being a regular hatchback that's surprisingly aerodynamic, you don't get a lot of, much of anything, frankly, any wind noise or road noise. There's a little bit of road noise, but as I've said 100 times before, I attribute that to Macedonia's horrible road quality rather than the tires themselves, especially here. The Astra was on Michelin tires, which tend to be pretty good from what I've heard. But anyway, on the highway, the Astra performs very well too. Obviously, it's not a performance car, but for most highway situations, including overtaking most slower vehicles, you shouldn't have any issue, and it feels comfortable driving at 120 kilometers an hour, which is the highway speed limit. It doesn't feel like it's really putting in all that much effort. It's not straining itself too much. And as for the dynamic driving, well, it's good. That's as much as I can say. It's good. It's not amazing. Like, it feels direct and it feels stable when you go around corners, and it's competent, but it's not gonna set your pants on fire. No surprise, it's not really the focus of Opel vehicles, and especially not here with this base engine. But overall, the driving experience behind the wheel of the Opel Astra is an excellent one. And that concludes the review of the Opel Astra. Actually, no, it doesn't, because I forgot to tell you about the fuel economy. Both in the city and on the highway, you can expect somewhere between 6.5 to 8 liters per 100 kilometers, which converts to this many mpgs. And now we can conclude the review of the new Opel Astra. For my second outing with the Opel Astra, I am just as impressed as I was before. And honestly, if it was my money, I would go for the base model because it has pretty much everything you need. It has silver wheels, which are better than diamond cut wheels, and I actually really like this engine. It really suits the character of the Astra, and it's perfectly adequate for most situations. So, is the new Opel Astra an excellent hatchback package? Yes, absolutely. The new Opel Astra gets a score of 8.5 out of 10. And that's going to be about it for this video, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to check the community tab for regular updates on the channel. And I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.